We're in the Jew function again, where we're trying to find the answer to the age-old question of anti-Semitism, or rather, we're trying to find our place in the world. It's really the question of who are we? Isn't that the question everyone is asking today, Seth? Don't you feel like everyone suddenly has an identity crisis all of a sudden?
I do. I have a lot to say about that. It seems like we're at a point where all of the barriers went down. All the barriers around religion, all the barriers around laws, all the barriers around sexuality, every single thing went down. Like, except I want to walk around like a dog, I accept you. I want to be this, I accept you. I want to, we came to a point where we accept everyone and simultaneously, like,
reject everyone.
Everyone's at war with their neighbor, even like war inside themselves. So this is where we found ourselves.
Yeah, we say it's a good time to be alive because it's probably a time of great change. And the nice thing is that a lot of people wrote about it. This is not. I think if anyone is listening, you shouldn't be alarmed. It's in the cards. It was in the stars. Things are changing, and now is as good a time to change things because I think a lot of the old stuff that we hung on to is just not relevant anymore. And it's okay to say, hey, you know what? Some stuff didn't work. It worked for a while. It seemed great, competing with each other until one is dead. It seemed nice for the last couple of thousand years, but now it's like it's less nice, right? Fighting for resources seemed like the right thing to do. Now there's no need to. So there's maybe things that we can change a little bit, and in that, I think Jews always find themselves as agents of change, and so. I think it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Jew, and I don't mean it in the religious or legal way. I mean it like if you feel that you want to bring people together, Jew from the word unity, as we always say, Yehudi, Yichud, together, all that. If you have that in you, then maybe there's some questions you need to ask yourself, and we're going to help.
Ray Dalio is a huge hedge fund guy, manages one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. He wrote a book called, wrote a few books. He wrote one called Principles of a Changing World Order. Basically, if you zoom out far enough, you start to see cycles and everything. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here. And I think that's what we've discovered, that if you're in really close, everything looks chaotic. But if you start zooming out, you see that we're in a process, and not actually a cycle, but more a spiral. Where it's going. I'm happy to be talking today. Well, you'll do the formal introduction, but I'm happy for this conversation because the more we're able to bring in these people with these perspectives that are not exactly our perspective, who see things, who have, their reach out into different circles, it helps us view what's really happening clearly. It's obvious that any one of us can't really see reality clearly, not in a way to design a piece of software, but in a way to make a good world for everyone. It's not coming from one person. It's coming from these connections, these different visions, and together. And I think today's guest is very unique in his perspective, in his reach, in his influence in different circles. And I hope that we can influence him a little bit and absorb some of his influence and hopefully get closer.
Just add him to our salad. You know how we're making this big salad, and you add stuff, and then it creates something new while still retaining its qualities. That's the beautiful thing about it. So this guy, I really resonate a lot with this guy, even though I'm not nearly as accomplished as him. But I like to see myself as someone with a hand in everything. And this guy is a true Renaissance guy. He's a novelist, an essayist, a law professor. He hosts conversations. He talks. He does everything.
If humanity is missing teeth, it's because of us.
Because your heart is basically full of calluses and you don't feel anything anymore?
Are you telling me, because this scares me, that there is such a lack of unity that Israel isn't going to even be able to defend itself?
If it's so terrible, why don't we do something about it? We're so smart, Jews, humans, we put a man on the moon, we have atom bomb.
A Jew-hating planet. It is a planet that hates Jews.
It doesn't matter if it's coming from the right, it doesn't come from the left. They killed Jesus, they made Jesus. But what is there a common denominator?
And I'm really happy to invite Thane Rosenbaum to the Jew function. Thane, please join us.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
To me, anti-Semitism is just a Tuesday. Probably not a day goes by. I don't want to alarm you. Seth, don't be alarmed. But I don't think a day goes by that I don't receive something through either 4 different email addresses or Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever it is, an anti-Semitic comment, an anti-Semitic, and not one that is just critical of something I said. I'm talking about anti-Semitism. Like a photo of me on Twitter that has a picture of me, said, "This is the ugly face of a Zionist." That kind of thing. So right. I get that every day. So I'm, very familiar with this. And I'm a child of Holocaust survivor. So I was raised to be on guard anyway. So I had never, probably didn't have a day in my life. It's just, I was fated to have a professional career in which I actually was exposed to the very thing my parents feared.
Do you get that kind of kick in the stomach feeling every day when you see those things?
No, not at all.
Because your heart is basically full of calluses and you don't feel anything anymore?
Yeah, Seth, I wouldn't be able to do this if I did that. I only am upset if my children see it, because they're shocked sometimes. They go, I tell them, no Google searches of your father. Do not mention in school that you're my child. I always say to them, do not fight my battles. It'll be, just do not, absolutely do not live your lives. Yeah.
Is it that you don't feel it, or you just block it off and say, I'm a mercenary in a war and I don't feel it, or you feel it and it's affecting you, but you have some way of dealing with it?
Well, I'll tell you, Seth, maybe in the beginning, I don't know if I felt differently. Like, for instance, I forgot the name of the Israeli who was just killed, that young Adonis in the West Bank, who was just killed. And I looked at him and thought, God, that was a blow. There's a real loss. I can't believe we lost that guy. He experienced something I, thank God, I've never seen. I always assume that I'm hearing from someone late at night, sitting in his underwear or her underwear, eating donuts. I don't really accept, that other than standard, conventional Jew hatred, that social media and the internet has allowed to go anonymous. This kind of thing wasn't possible years ago. Today, anyone with a phone thinks they're smart. Anyone with a social media account thinks they have an opinion. That was not true. Historically, if you were a neo-Nazi, you were treated like a neo-Nazi, like an imbecile. If you were a left-wing Jew hater, you were, treated like you should be. But today, through social media and through just a general level of ignorance about history, both Jews and non-Jews, ignorance about history, and the point that I think you and Seth and Leo were both talking about, is sort of this safe spaces and respect that's accorded for every other ethnic group except for Jews.
Right.
When it comes to Jews, it's a free speech issue. I'm allowed to say whatever I want. I have the academic freedom to say whatever I want. If Jews respond, it's Islamophobia. Right. It's racism. It's like, how is that? How is both things possible? So anyway, what I'm saying is, I'm in this business for the most part, and I have to see it for what it is. This is something that Jews have experienced for thousands of years. It manifested itself in different ways. We're seeing it now for a number of different unique reasons, very overtly, explicitly, unashamedly, globally. It's very different. But for now, someone like me, until someone comes at me with a knife, I'm going to regard it as, a garden variety hatred of Jews that is made possible through the digital world. So the question, because we do address the difference between the garden variety and the more the ideological one, and you do see the 3 main ideologies, right? The religious-based, the racial, and the political. You see those 3 stories, those 3 narratives, kind of clothing onto each other. The question is, why is it so pervasive? Well, you'd expect, like any other human phenomenon, to eventually kind of fade away, or to find a
a middle ground, but it seems like you just scratch the surface. It's kind of like how you wrote about it in your essay, neo-Nazis question mark, right? Like, is it really neo? It's not a new thing. Rather, it's always been there. It's waiting for the right moment to rear its head. Why do you have an explanation for it?
Well, we are living in a time of heightened awareness and the license that we're given to call people racists. It's very fashionable in a day, to call half a dozen people racist to their faces or on social media. This is new. And so it's diluted, as I've written before, if everyone is a racist, then no one is a racist. And this is a mistake that African Americans have made. It's a tragic mistake.
What's the mistake? Explain it.
To allow everything to be called racism, to make no distinction between Thane Rosenbaum and the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, to make no distinction between Abraham Lincoln and and a white supremacist. We're living in a crazy era that anything can be called racism, and there are no gradations of it. There's no absolutism. Everyone is a white supremacist. If you're white, you're an oppressor. If you're a person of color, you're oppressed and a victim. If you're white, you should shut up and pay attention because you have a lot to learn. And if you're an African American or person of color, you have automatic virtue by pigmentation and everything you say, and you can't be blamed for anything, which is why you see things like, Israel is always criticized for any response it makes to Palestinian terrorism.
Sure.
And any response to Palestinian terrorism is Islamophobia and racism. Is it possible? So I think we're living in an era of, and also this very ideological, strong, anti-colonial, decolonial atmosphere that again deals with whiteness, a hatred of whiteness, a hatred of Western societies, and not just a hatred, an avowed teeth-gnashing, rage-filled hatred of whatever is white, whatever is deemed colonial, oppressive, and imperial. And that's very different. We have never seen that before. And Jews have been swept up into that, which is why they don't want Jews to be considered people of color. You can't convince anyone that Mizrahi Jews are dark-skinned Jews. You can't convince anyone because that destroys the story. The story is Jews are very privileged white people. You can determine that because of their influence, disproportionate influence in society, and because of their relative success and wealth. So they are super white, the biggest of white. They have no history of prejudice. There's no history of persecution. And if anything, they are persecutors. They are oppressors. And that is what has ramped up anti-Semitism, anti-colonialism, decolonialism, this overt, explicit attack on whiteness. Jews have gotten wrapped up in that.
So I think this was a good, passionate introduction of this thing. The question is, if you have an opinion or if you found something, is looking at it, nothing comes, out of nothing. There's always, something always precedes something. There's always like this, that there are some sentiments, like what's happening inside people or inside of our societies that has given birth to such strong feelings, to such ignorance. I mean, it's hard to write it off to say, okay, everybody's just getting more stupid because of the screens and that's what's happening. This is kind of like, maybe it's amplifying something, but I don't believe that this is the root cause. We're feeling creatures first, and people are feeling a certain something that then pushes them to start looking for something, and then they find it elsewhere. I think you write about it also in your essay, right? People are, and we saw it also years ago with Al Qaeda, with the Taliban, right? People leaving their Western homes, comfortable homes, and joining a terror organization, right, in a hellhole, or people leaving comfortable life, rational life, joining a neo-Nazi group, like. Why is that? What are people looking for that our society or that we ourselves maybe are not giving one another?
It's very complicated because I think that there's some of it that is unique to the right and some of it is unique to the left, right? They're not the same. They're reasons. So for instance, during Charlottesville, when you heard Jews will not replace us, right? Now, we all know what that means now. What that means now, which is something is connected to something everyone has said about Jews for hundreds of years, which is they are foreigners and cosmopolitans and globalists. Anytime you hear the word globalism, cosmopolitan, you're hearing anti-Semitism. So here's a tip to your audience. The word cosmopolitan and globalism means we hate Jews. And why do we hate Jews? Well, because they're not nationalists. They're only nationalists about Israel. They're not patriotic wherever they are. They're there for their own.
The whole double loyalty thing.
Yeah, they're not really. They're foreigners. They're interested in something else. They're not interested in us. They're not patriotic. They're scheming. They pull levers, but they're not nationalists. They are cosmopolitans and globalists. And they're part of, hence, a global conspiracy, right? All this crazy talk,
and
right,
I'll just put in parentheses that the same phenomenon repeats itself throughout history, and no amount of effort on the side of the Jews changes that feeling. Like, Jews fought in World War I, died alongside the Germans. Doesn't matter. Came back home. You're
marched
traitors.
along with MLK,
right?
Yeah.
It's almost like doesn't matter what we do, we're sort of placed back in like we can't leave that square. So,
but Seth,
continue.
Seth, I heard you jump in a second, but very few African Americans know or care that Jews marched along with MLK in the civil rights movement.
No, but I claim that it wouldn't change anything, Thane, that even if they knew about it, inside of them, they feel something else.
There is clearly a predisposition to hate Jews. And if you go throughout history, there are always reasons, and they're always change. They're always mutable, malleable. They change, they morph, right? Jews at the same time were considered vermin and all powerful.
This is great. This is great. Okay, so is there a so the detail, it doesn't matter if it's coming from the right, it doesn't come from the left. They killed Jesus, they made Jesus, they're capitalists, right. they're Marxists. But is there a common denominator?
Well, I think that some of it goes all the way back. Freud picked up on this. A lot of it goes back to just monotheism. Things don't help when you are the chosen people with the promised land and light onto nations, and you're able to back it up.
But a lot of hold
on. Okay. He said something really able to back it up. That's a big. Hold on, that's a big point. And I'll say why. I'll say why, because I think people are thinking, oh, okay, startup nation and more, Nobel laureates than everyone else. Okay, talented folks, no question. And we talk about it also, why we think that is. But I have a contention with that. As talented as we are, as great as we are we bringing light? Is light the thing that we bring, or are we failing to bring something that is missing in the world right now? Not another startup, not another chip, not a cherry tomato, none of the great things that were relevant and necessary, but something is missing that we're not bringing, perhaps.
Which is a common denominator for everyone.
Except that we would always be the wrong messenger. Even if we knew it, we would have to hand it off to someone else.
That's a good point, maybe.
That is the problem. The problem is the teeth gnashing resentment about Jews is historical. If humanity is missing teeth, it's because of us.
If I was better at asking questions, I would be able to try and lead it there. I'm not. So I'm just gonna kind of hit it right on the nose. You talked. I saw some interview you did about one of your books. You talked about vengeance, and you said that we can't tolerate, like you said something like in our genes, in our guts, we can't tolerate like a wrongdoer getting away with something, or we're wired for revenge and things like that. So
and justice. One of the things I say in the book, which is so unusual, is stop saying there's a difference between justice and revenge. They're exactly the same.
Okay,
there should be no difference. We've made a mistake. It's a mistake. It's just like the Israelis using the word occupation. That's a mistake. It's just like the world accepting the fact that we can even discuss Israel's existence. That was a mistake. We have sat back and watched certain things happen and just shrug them off. We should never accept the word occupation is simply the wrong word. That doesn't mean that there isn't claims of right.
Well, but let me. I'm
just saying that let's just be clear. It's a mistake to say there's a distinction between justice and vengeance. They're identical.
Fine. So vengeance is like what we see the behavior towards us as, but people feel they must have justice inside. You're saying it's in us. People must have this. So is there an injustice that we caused? Is there some reason why everyone is looking at us, some in their guts, regardless of whether they're from the right or their left? Is there something that they feel that because of our existence and because we're not maybe doing something, that there's an injustice, and that doesn't even bypasses the mind completely?
I just look, Seth, my problem with that, I'd like to do that. And it's a very Jewish thing to do, by the way.
Which is what?
To reflect upon the self and to see some possible deficiency in Jews.
Let's just do an exercise. Even if we're wrong, we throw it out.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's, I remember years ago writing about Steven Spielberg's movie Munich. And I said something that was very unusual because Israelis were upset that the people who were retaliating, getting justice against the murderers of Israel's Olympic team in 1972, in the screenplay, in the movie, they are seen the night after they kill a terrorist in agony, arguing within themselves, in anguish, moral anguish, on whether or not they should do this again. And they get up the next day and they do it again. And then the next day they get drunk at dinner and they argue with each other. And Israelis apparently were upset by that depiction. And I said, no, that you should be proud about that. It shows Jews don't thoughtlessly kill. They may get up and know what's required, but it's not because they didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it and rethinking and reflecting and second guessing and waking up the next day and saying, okay, who's next on the list? This has got. So anyway, I just don't like I understand that it's a very Jewish thing to do, to self-reflect, but I just go through history. I just did there's a network, you'll probably hear about it, the Jewish TV channel, and I just filmed for them what's going to be a weekly or bi-weekly editorial visual, 3 minutes. I do it 3 minutes. And in it, I'm giving you a brief, sneak peek. I talk about, the slave trade, Jews in the slave trade, right? And saying, there's the stuff that is attributed to Jews is so preposterous, is so absurd that if anyone spent 30 seconds, that's why I'm saying for Jews to spend a lot of times, what have we done, is so ridiculous, right? Jews and money, really.
But maybe not about a thing, not about a thing that we did something with a bank or we owned some slaves. I'm saying even in the same way that feeling for revenge is like wired in us, is there also something wired in us, just wired in, not some action we did.
Yeah.
But is there something wired into the fabric of humanity that they're expecting of us?
No.
Okay, so hold on.
I don't. I just simply said I don't accept that. It's only because, again, the creativity that has gone into hating Jews has been so extraordinary, such filled with imaginative fire. Like for instance, the anti-Zionism that is now the disguise, the human rights issue that gives license and credence to anti-Semitism. These are all these examples of the reformation of hating Jews, and not for something that's particular that can be changed. If you could simply do this, if you could simply show this, because Seth, it's been going on for so long. There are plenty of people out there. It's not like non-Jews are inarticulate or all so ignorant that they can't say what it is, that they can't actually articulate and in a way that Jews would hear and go, you know what, you got a point.
Okay, so hold on. We actually think that we've been trying to articulate it for.
I would love to hear it.
Well, you have to listen to the podcast. No, but let's maybe get to it from from a back door. First of all, let's zoom out to humanity. Humanity is being on a treadmill, kind of going through the motions, developing. A lot of technological developments. For a while it seemed like this technology is bringing only good. The world is improving. Everything is great to some extent. To some extent, it is, but at some point, you see that the torment people are in is tremendous. Like we haven't improved our well-being. Let's put it this way: we have the tools. We can bring food and medication and clothing to every place on the planet, and yet people are walking around unhappy. Society is not a happy
But
place.
when you're
to
saying
be.
we, are you referring to Jews or
No.
just as humanity in general?
It's humanity. Yeah. First of all, I'm just talking about this whole.
I understand.
This whole experiment. And this is surprising. You'd expect that people who live in the same lifestyle level as a monarch lived 200-300 years ago, you'd expect them to be better off, and they're not. They're not. There's so much depression and addiction to medication and suicide. You name it, and it's only kind of you see in that there's a departure from a lot of the things that used to give us. We're not, despite all the technology. By the way, a lot of technology that was brought in by Jews, also not Jews, but a lot of great stuff that on the face of it, it's like, okay, this is cool, but it's not making the world a happier place right now. Where you have people are suffering, and I think it's one of the reasons people are looking for the sense of maybe safety or a simple sense of confidence that comes from belonging. Right, I'll join a terrorist organization because the sentiments of brotherhood are much clearer to me. I get it. Here, it's confusing. It's individual. It's every man for his own. I don't know what to make of it. There, it's maybe more dangerous, but it's simpler. I get it. I feel it. You join a neo-Nazi group. You join a gang. Right? It gives you a sense of something.
But Leo, Freud wrote about this in Civilization and Its Discontents. He said specifically through the ancient early man and women recognized that they were largely vulnerable in nature, that unlike the animal kingdom, we are very vulnerable. And we're also vulnerable to bigger guys who can always take things away from us. And so the need for community is built into the DNA of our people. This is not something new, hasn't happened. The question is, why are Jews scapegoats for the rejection of? See, what's happened is when people build community, they're building civilization, but there's also a rejection of civilization, right? Why else join a terrorist organization unless you're rejecting civilization?
So hold on. So this is exactly the point this is where the fork in the road is. Every other human unity was always against some other group, always rejecting another group. And we're saying that Jews is the only group that was taught thousands of years ago how to unite for the sake of unity, or for the sake of a higher goal, or for the sake of revealing an upper force in nature. I don't even want to call it God. I want to say a certain feeling, a certain quality that gives you strength and power, and you name, and ideas. A lot of great stuff is coming. And by the way, today there's so many studies that support what's happening. When these things are connecting in the right way, it's like the sum is greater than its parts. So there was this one group that did it. Like you said, Jews are thinking, do I really need to kill this other person? Because we're wired, we're ideologically founded on idea of unity for the sake of unity, not against someone, but for the sake of that concept alone. And
well, can I just say, since you're calling from Israel, your show is based in Israel. People forget that the Balfour Declaration would have given a country to Israel that would have been 2/3 bigger than it is right now. Israel would have been gigantic. It would have included Jordan. It would have been gigantic. And in 1947, when the UN began the partition, and when Transjordan was created even earlier through a different agreement, it was interesting how the founders of Israel in each instance said, all right, let's just get this country going. Let's just get it. All right. Okay. It's not nearly as cool. We would have had it all the way over there. All right. Let's get this going. When you compare that to the Palestinians, which is, I will not do anything until I get that olive tree back. Right. No other olive tree. It has to be that olive tree. That is a huge difference. And it says something about Jews. They're saying, I'm prepared to make that sacrifice because I want to get this going.
You know what it says to me? It's like a kindergarten one kid is
Yeah.
the 3-4-year-old who's still like,
Yeah.
this is mine. And one is 7, 8, 9, 10 that is able to say, okay, maybe I can create a compromise. And
Yeah.
that's what we claim. That's where we claim humanity is. Humanity on the whole is like a kid in kindergarten or maybe in high school. And most people are so infantile as groups. We're still like so possessive, territorial. We don't have that concept of maturity. There's one group that has a faint memory of that, and that is the Jewish people. That was made. It's made of different people. It's not a biological group, not an ethnic. It's a hodgepodge of people who were brought together around an ideal,
ancient Babylon.
exactly, Babylon, ideal of unity, and now they were given this ideal as a small group, and then at some point they say, okay, now you got it. Now you're gonna like be broken apart, spread around. So when humanity is ready, is mature, when the ego has reached a certain degree, now you can rise again and rekindle that concept. It's almost stupidly simple if you think about it. If you don't kind of resist.
It's weird that everywhere you look, whether it turns out Bill Maher's mother was Jewish, and then this one over in China had this, and then that one. It's like I don't know why I brought up Bill Maher, but the point is that they had this unity thing. Then they were dispersed into the whole world, right? 10 tribes were lost, and then Jews are everywhere in every corner of the earth, and now that seed of unity that was planted somehow in there, now that humanity has gone through this development, now you have probably behind Al-Qaeda, behind ISIS, they're probably Jews. I don't mean like an Ashkenazi guy from Brooklyn. I mean, some lost tribe guy. Like behind everything, there's probably some Jew in every little corner of the world. And to now somehow bring all of humanity, while really fast forwarding, like really far into the story here, but maybe behind all of this, that's why it's coming from the right and from the left and from every corner. That's
like nowhere to run. There's like nowhere to run except towards that concept. Now, I want to say it's very important to say we're not saying he who comes to kill you have to kill him first. You have to still deal with life as it happens. But at the core of things, right now, Israel, where I am right now, is a symbol of polarity, unlike any other place in the world. As polarized America is in every other place in the world, Israel, come on, 8 million people, you guys can't get along? No, cannot. It's almost like in spite of, right? It's just to spite you. Say, okay, now on top of this, show everyone that you can get along, that you can find the higher ground. No one else can do it. America won't be able to do it. Russia and Ukraine won't be able to do it. No one else will be able to do it.
Be a family with the Mizrahis, with the ones from Ethiopia, with the Haredim, with the secular. We gave you a tiny piece of land. We gave you a small number of people. Not asking to do anything with billions yet. Just be a family. Just try.
Well, has Israel, it may have been more divisive today as it is around the world, and there are reasons for that. But has Israel ever been a family without rancor, without debate? My understanding of the Knesset, it was always ugly.
Ugly, yes.
Maya Kahana was in the Knesset. Menachem Begin, and Ben Gurion hated each other's guts. And both of them became giants of the country. I just don't, you're talking about a people that, are trained in the Talmud to dispute each other.
Yes. Mentally, intellectually, emotionally, yes. But above it, it's also the same people who somehow, throughout history, were able to then sit down at the Shabbat table and like put things aside, right? If someone was able to do it, it's us. We don't have we can't, like Americans, like, oh, I hate my brother-in-law, I'm moving to another state, never going to talk to him again. No, with Jews, you don't have that. You have to face all the rancor and all the arguments, and even, Hillel and Shammai, bitter enemies, best friends. Rav Kook and Sonnenfeld, bitter enemies, externally, best friends. The really advanced people in the Jewish nation were always the ones who understood that a Jew is a person.
So are you talking about leaders, or you're talking about Jews in general?
I'm talking about every person who sees himself as Jewish. It has to display and live the concept of this unity. That's what I feel is missing. Not just I feel. Now, we study our history, right? every time Jews, were at each other's throats, then the enemy just marched in and took over. That was it before every big cataclysm. And then all the Jewish sages write about it. Look, humanity, again, put Jews aside for a second. Humanity has to do better than a bacteria. We have to. We're not, if a single cell organism can get together and form a superorganism and, and reach some higher level of consciousness and realize that I don't have to fight over resources and blah, 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 and I don't have to kill everyone, we as humans have to do it. We can't go, we'll go to a third world war and then a fourth. What will remain of us?
Are you saying, I'm fascinated by this. Are you saying?
All right, so the Jew function, a lot of people ask what is this and who are we?
Are we anti-Semitic? Are we self-hating Jews? I heard that also.
We're like you. We're concerned citizens. We did our research, hours and hours and hours of research into historic patterns, into Jewish texts, and I mean a lot of Jewish texts, going all the way back to Abraham and other notable sages and Kabbalists, and all the way into the recent era. You'll be surprised how much amazing quotes exist about the need for Jews to unite. So that's why we're doing this podcast. Like us, hit the bell thing on the YouTube so you can get a notification when a new episode is up. Share it far and wide. Find something that you like. YouTube lets you cut clips. Share that clip with a loved one, with a Jewish friend, with a non-Jew who's like bothering you at work about something, and we're like, oh, that clip is exactly what I needed. Share it far and wide. Commenting is a great way to get a conversation going. And let's get back to our guest.
I'm fascinated by this. Are you saying that if Israel could to show itself as being more united, it would be teaching something to the world, and
maybe a light to the nations or something?
Immediately, it will show. Now,
spread through the network.
Funny enough, a few weeks ago, a couple of months already, Jordan Peterson was here with Ben Shapiro. He gets up on the stage in Jerusalem and he goes, for whatever reason, everybody's looking at you. For whatever reason, if you can make the city work, everybody's like waiting for you to make it happen. Like he goes and says it unprovoked, and he's fascinated by the, Ari's Kabbalah and all that, but he doesn't have enough. But he studies human evolution. He's looking for that. How do you reconcile the differences? And then we study the writings of Baal HaSulam, the Yehuda Ashlag, who wrote the commentary in the Zohar. You're probably familiar. And he said, I'm quoting something. He says, I've already said that there are two ways to discover the completeness, the path of Torah or light or instruction, let's call it, or the path of suffering. Not Torah as in like, I'll be a religious Jew. Hence, the Creator has given humanity technology until they have invented the atom and hydrogen bombs. And if the total ruin that they are destined to bring upon the world is still not evident to the world, they can wait for a third world war or a fourth one. The bombs will do their thing. And the relics who remain after the ruin will have no other choice but to take upon themselves the work, where both individuals and nations will not work for themselves more than is necessary for their sustenance, while everything else they do will be for the good of others. If all the nations of the world agree, if there will be no longer wars in the world, for no person will be concerned with his own good whatsoever, but only with the good of others. Altruism, unity above everything else. That's kind of like the ask here. That's what, and again, it's not like one instance. You look at every, right? What's the great rule of the Torah? Love your friend as yourself. But we keep saying, we'll do it last. All the religious people say, let's put on tefillin and keep the Shabbat, and then we'll do it. Like, no. Do the love first. That's the rule. The rule includes all the details.
So look, I'm a lot older than you guys. I think a lot older, and I've traveled very widely, but that doesn't mean that you haven't either. So, and I'm battle tested, not in a uniform, but I've been around enough. I'm just a real cynic here. This is very difficult.
We are too.
Yeah, I listen to you and I think, are you guys kidding? If Israel did that, you'd give the world yet another reason to hate Israel. Why is it, on top of everything else, and that's what I would say about the startup nation, Israel has achieved all of this with 5, 6, 7 wars, with terrorism. This is done with that, right? On top of that, they are, when they take the Pew surveys, Israel is one of the happiest places to live.
Number 4.
On top of that, and it has these great beaches and great restaurants. And now that we have French people, they dress better,
I can argue that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I look at this and think, yeah, give everyone another reason to look at the Jews showing us up. They think they're so special.
So, but
they're
then we're not.
united, and they're united, and we're not. And they're putting it in our face.
That's
Who
the
are
thing.
they?
Hold on.
It's a good thought, by the way.
We agree with you on everything, by the way. You know, and we are like those snipers who are constantly questioning everything as well.
Yeah.
We're
I love that you picked up on that, Seth, the sniper.
Yeah, we're not
self-questioning.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it comes across often that we're just total naive idiots, but we have these same questions. If we're doing it in the way that we're talking about, then then everybody would feel fulfilled from it. First of all, we have to also understand that there is a network. The same way memes, flow through the network, or the same way that that culture, dance moves, a certain song, flows through the network. So this also flows through the network, this unity. So it's not like the Jews are uniting and it's rubbed in anyone's face. What it means is somehow, I don't know, we're not smart enough to know, because it's not about smarts. It's about the more we connect and another one connects, like Leo said earlier, the sum is greater than the parts. Something becomes alive, something becomes electric, like two filaments in a light bulb. Something starts to shine in there, that when the unity starts to happen, people feel calmer. People start to feel confident. People start to feel
Israel. But I'm sorry, Israel.
I'm not okay, but hold on. Let's not talk about the political
responder on any global disaster.
You're right.
And people look at that and they think, what? Pink washing, disaster washing.
100%.
No one actually watches what you're saying. Show us how to conduct yourself.
Because maybe it's not about. Maybe these are not the actions that the world needs. Maybe we don't need. Okay, and so let's leave. Like Leo said before,
we should go naked. What? How emasculated do you want the Jewish people?
No. God forbid.
I think, Seth, it's time to stop apologizing.
I agree.
That's what this show is about. I want to be the one guy that came on it and said, "Stop apologizing. Stop." If anyone is listening to this podcast, if Seth and Leo are telling you to apologize,
no, we're not saying apologize. We're not saying apologize.
Apologizing.
What we're trying.
It's not our fault. It's not.
We're not. Listen. We're not apologizing. I am not apologizing for anything. I was in the army. Someone comes to kill me, I kill them. Not a problem. I'm not apologizing for anything. I'm trying to move forward. I'm trying to ask what will change the world. What will change the rise of neo-Nazism? What will change the rise of anti-Semitism, of Arab hatred, of this conflict that's happening right now in Israel? What will change it? What will change it? And I can only see one thing that will change it. A conscious, human equals conscious, not animal, right? A conscious decision to not look for uniformity, look for unity above the friction. You understand that concept? Unity above.
I'm sorry, you're there, and I never second guess people that live there. Like, I never tell Israelis what to do, because my kids didn't go to the IDF,
right.
And I was in the IDF, and I'm one of those. I'm not a smug American. I may be many things, but I've never been a smug Jew or American. I don't look down on red state people. I don't call them deplorables. It's just not who I am. I don't do that. Right. And so similarly, I don't tell Israelis how to conduct themselves because they're living in there. Are you telling me, because this scares me, that there is such a lack of unity that Israel isn't going to even be able to defend itself? Because I would argue that that part of its disunity is because a large segment of the Israeli population have given up on the rest of the world. They see the rest of the world for what it is, a Jew-hating planet. It is a planet that hates Jews. It does other things, this planet, but it also hates Jews really well. And half the country knows this. There are people who are still, peace now people from Israel, Tikkun Olam, Americans, Reform, who, in my mind, just are not on this planet.
That's a total mistake.
I'm just saying, I think that there is unity in Israel when it comes to the security of Jews.
We talked about it a lot, and I wanted to say.
You mean in other shows?
No. Yeah, in other episodes, we talk about it a lot, and I want to say, I always want to say, hey, when the next attack comes
Yeah.
or the next operation comes, everybody lines up. But now you have pilots standing outside saying, we're not going to serve, we're not going to do our reserve service. You have it came to such a level thing that I used to be able to walk. I'm a pretty kind of middle ground kind of guy. I'm a bridge person, right?
Yeah.
I had friends, I'm kind of like Ashkenazi Jew. I have friends on the, dark-skinned Jews and all that.
Seth
I'm always
is your friend, and he's in New Jersey.
exactly. There you go.
He's your partner.
I'm always in the middle. And I'm telling you, there's a feeling that you can't go to the protesters and say, "Hey, dude, let's just kind of sit down for a second and have a chat." No, there's like something is in the eyes is taken away, and that's scary. In 2012, when the social outbreak, social protests came out, like the Occupy around the world, we have friends here who came out with they did like discussion circles, put people in a circle, and like, "Hey, let's talk, let's find common grounds." Now it's beyond that. People are at the point where it's like either it's going to be like a civil war or two countries, all those insane ideas, or we understand that this is all done to expose the fact that we were never truly united. We always had a shared interest. Hey, let's protect ourselves. What we're saying here, let's find that quality, that love that Seth was talking about, that infantile, naive love that he's talking about. Let's find it, but consciously, willingly, not with my same kind. Oh, you're a hippie, I'm a hippie, let's make love. No, screw that. You're Ashkenazi, I'm Sephardic. Let's see, let's find a place above that. That's what's required here. Two opposites unite above the friction. It's a totally different kind of unity. It hasn't been done, has not been done in the world.
All I could say is that I listen to you, and I think this is exactly what we're experiencing in the United States. It's a level of national enmity, divisions, polarization, but also something that I think Israel and America shares, which is they just and continue to have a political leadership, whether it's Donald Trump or Bibi Netanyahu, and now this new coalition government. Look, my entire life, Shas, the Israeli Orthodox parties, these parties were really marginal. They had no influence. The fact that these parties now, ultra-nationalist and Orthodox religious parties, are calling the shots, that Bibi comes across as a moderate, to me, as an American looking at this, and I go, that has a lot to do with this. Because Bibi is beloved and hated in a way that no other prime minister has ever been.
True.
And Trump is unlike anything I've seen. And certainly there's nothing what's happened. People in this country hate him. What's happening now with this case out of New York and the falsification of the business record and the Stormy Daniels. I'm the legal analyst for CBS News, and I'm talking about this all day. I'm like shocked that this is what we're talking about. We're still on the porn star. We're talking about that, the porn star. So I'm just saying it, and you're hearing people saying, "I'm out to get Trump."
Thane, what do you think?
I'm just saying that to me, I think when I hear disunity, I think we've always had disunity in Israel. It's never been fully united, but something is different now. And I think Bibi and the ultra-Orthodox, ultra-nationalist parties have changed things and have led to what you're seeing in the protest.
I think it's naive to just pin it all down on Bibi. I can tell you that.
Leo, hold on. Don't say this on CBS, but just entertain this for a second. Is it possible?
You can't change the world, right? You can't change a country. You can't change a city. You can't change a neighborhood. It's hard to get everyone in your building to agree on something, but you can change yourself. And that's what we're after. Little changes that will grow to a critical mass. What we're saying also is that we Jews, we've had it. There was a moment in time that Jews actually touched that quality that the whole world is waiting for us to give them, and which is what we're discussing in our talks. And you can hear about it in episode 7 of the Mystery Book podcast, the first 22 episodes of this whole series. And we go into some really heartwarming descriptions, right? Like the
Temple
Woodstock.
Love, that episode is called.
What's that? Temple Love, right?
Temple Love.
Yeah, it was the Woodstock before Common Era.
Yeah, people should listen to that one and get a taste of something that they always knew should exist or could exist, it did exist. That's what we're looking to build. Check that out in episode number 7, Temple of.
Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guest.
But just to entertain this for a second, is it possible that the people are the power source, are the condition for those leaders and not the other way around? Not that Bibi and Trump are then, that's trickling down to everyone, but the feeling with, like, the people get the president they deserve kind of thing, right, is the condition within the people, between each relationship in every home, that magnetism or repulsion there, and that one there, and between those neighbors, and between that this is the power source that creates the conditions for the existence of these kind of leaders.
They reflect what the people feel. They reflect what the people feel. You know.
But yes, but I think it's always there.
It's always there.
It takes
so,
a
Thane,
certain, like, for instance, it's clear to me. I worked on a different campaign, not the Trump campaign. I worked on it, and I'm often wrong, and I was wrong analyzing a lot of that. But like, Donald Trump's genius is that he saw something in America that had been dormant. He saw rage and anger. And by the way, Bibi's elections, I'm not blaming Bibi. I'm grateful to him for so much of his leadership. So absolutely not. But I'm saying, when Bibi announced during one of the campaigns, the Arabs are rushing to the polls, right, to mobilize his supporters to get to the polls, right? You know, it's very similar kind of populism that we saw here with Donald Trump, a marshaling, a galvanizing of populist energy, nationalist energy that both countries have been exhibiting. That's why I'm saying I think that there's nothing new about Nazis because they didn't go away.
Right.
You know, what does happen, what I think is true, certainly here in the United States, Donald Trump took the gutter and made it respectable, right? The idea of the president who was unpresidential, the guy who was not diplomatic, who made fun of the appearance of another political candidate's wife, right? Just shocking things. Right. Things that civilized people don't do, and I'm thinking, what that has
civilized people, the civilized people drop drone bomb Middle Eastern, hundreds of thousands of people in Middle Eastern countries, even though they dress nice and go to dinner nice. But we're not talking about Trump. But it's
none of it is.
But Seth, that we'd say the same thing about the atomic bomb.
100%. I think they're all. I won't say.
No. Listen. What we're saying is, and not just us, human ego has been climbing steadily. And this is where this whole discussion is going. I'm like, let me ask you, what's the alternative to this crazy picture that we're trying to paint? What will be the end game? Try to imagine 5 years down the road in Israel, in America, around the world, if that human ego is left unchecked, if we all don't band around this,
we don't try and make love, if we don't try and unite, where is this going to end up?
Yeah, where would it go?
It's a bad outcome for sure. But I would simply say, I look at this globally, historically, right? This is not the Middle Ages. People forget how wars were fought.
But it's worse. You can drop a bomb and kill 1 million people. You don't need the Middle Ages. You actually have to kill someone, see in the eyes.
Even with everything that's happened, I think Steven Pinker wrote a book about this recently. No matter what people say, the 20th century was not the bloodiest century.
Yeah, I know. Right? I know they say that.
That if you look at history, if you look at the movie Braveheart, if you look back in history, you see savagery. Right?
Yeah, I know. I know Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun. We know that.
Yeah, ISIS to me are the problem with caliphates is that it has romanticizing the 12th century. Right? It's this desire to go back to earlier times in history. I don't know where we're headed. I do know that what you said before about what happens if Israel has to mobilize for another war, humanity does have a history of pulling it together when they need to.
Yeah, I know, but how many times can we look at ourselves and say, we'll pull it together?
That's our whole story. That's our whole history. It's pulling it together when they come to kill us.
Why not be wise? When you agreed with me saying, yes, the human ego is a terrible thing, you immediately followed it up with, but. This is my contention. That's that but word that keeps sneaking into the conversation and saying, yes, it's terrible, but. And I'm saying, no. If it's so terrible, why don't we do something about it? We're so smart, Jews, humans, we put a man on the moon, we have atom bomb, yet we can't even look at our own selves and say, there's a part of me, in me, not a Jew, in me as a human, that is not like an animal that can live in harmony and it can only hunt what it needs and then let go. No, I'm like, that quality. Why don't we get united around that, against that?
I hate to bring up Freud. I will refer once again to Freud's Civilization and its Discontents, right? That somehow, no matter how much civilization we bring, it also brings a response of discontent. That we simply do. Discontent. That's why it's called civilization is discontent. The more we civilize, the more we arouse the death instinct, the death impulse.
Right, but here's the problem.
The destructive, the more we want to bring stuff down, the more we build, the more we want to tear it down. It may be something that is endemic to our species. Why don't we? Well, look, human beings are the only species on Earth that kills for no reason.
Exactly.
We're not predators. We don't eat each other. Exactly. We don't have the reasons. We kill for no reason other than self-defense, but we do a lot of killing for no reason. So there's obviously something wired in our species that leads us. The question is, given the thousands of years of history that we've already had, do we really think, thousands of years of civilized history? And by the way, I started off by saying so much of what we're hearing is anti-colonial, decolonial, right? Well, what it passes for civilization on this planet is Western culture. And yet most of the planet now, even in America, on a university, it's rage against Western culture, rage against science and technology, rage. So, talk about discontent. Even on a university campus that should be celebrating Western culture, they're attacking civilization. They're attacking. To them, civilization is racist, misogynistic, it's homophobic, it's Islamophobic, it's transphobic, it's everything that's bad, right? And I would argue, no, civilization is the pathway to human fulfillment and betterment.
Agreed.
Good luck with that, Thane. That you'll get more anti-Semitism tomorrow. If anyone hears that, another example of how Thane is a sexist, a racist. He thinks civilization is a good thing. He thinks that chopping off heads is a bad thing. He thinks it's okay to tell another culture what to do, that there are some universal truths. Okay, he doesn't understand that there are moral truths, and everybody has its own logic. So if one group wants to chop off heads, who are we to say that they shouldn't? It's like, okay, I will be the guy that thinks you shouldn't.
Right. And we agree on that as well, by the way. I think that that whole breakdown of rational thinking and reasoning and trust in science and technology, and I'm a science guy. I studied science.
I heard you say I loved your bacteria line.
But yeah, I mean, no, I have a whole thing about network science that you can see. I'm looking at this and I see this, not me, just, Seth and I, we look at this and see it as really an opportunity to revisit everything, the very foundation, the very ethos around which we function as a civilization. Why bring so many people together? Why have so many of us? Where can it go? What should we do? And I don't see any other way. I won't be able to reason with the crazies or anything like that. I need to somehow reach the heart.
All right. Even if everything you and Seth want to happen could happen, even if you're right that would be the magic bullet that's absolutely essential, I would say you don't have an audience for it because you have to restore order. What we have now is chaos, global chaos. And no matter what as I said, I don't think Jews can be the messengers, but no matter how it's packaged and how it's presented, and who are the representatives of this movement to somehow unite the planet, I don't think you even have a chance.
Here's the good news. Yeah. The same way that the Jews are a tiny, tiny fraction, and yet we see their influence everywhere in the world, in banking, in law, in entertainment, in education, in healthcare, okay? In the same way that the Jews are a tiny fraction of humanity, we only need to be a tiny fraction among the Jews. It's the same natural frequency that moves through the system. We don't need to get a billion people on board. We just need to start making a few good connections, and then just like a natural body, other parts will connect. And not everyone needs to be in the middle of the conversation like this.
Yeah.
Something else can happen in rap music, and someone can write a movie about something. We just need. The good news is we just need a few at the middle who are willing to, like we did here, like you were shouting. We just need to be able to agree that we want the goal more than our different opinions, and just start. Sorry, Leo.
But look, indifference and complacency, to me, is as endemic, as instinctive, as impulsive in the human species as is violence and vengeance and love, all of these other emotions. And I would say indifference and complacency is something, we've always, the bystanders are always the majority. They don't think of themselves that way, but the people that are watching. But I would say, I don't know if you guys watched the Rock and Roll and Hall of Fame induction. If you haven't, I would suggest to you and your listeners, this year's Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, John Cougar Mellencamp, his speech was just a knockout. He was talking about anti-Semitism, and he was rejecting anti-Semitism. And it was extraordinary. He was talking about his lawyer. And at one point he said, everything that's ever happened to me that's been good, everything, people that have helped me throughout my entire career have all been Jews. Right. And I thought to myself, yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. I did an event once with Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court Justice. Yeah. She had just written a memoir. I had read the book, obviously, before doing the interview. And I was shocked from when she was a child in a Bronx housing project. There was a Jewish doctor that took her on for free. She was a child diabetic. In school, at Princeton, at Yale, at law firms, there was always, she even pointed out, Jewish friends, women of her, took her dress to go get dresses. People helped out. I'm just saying there are very few people that speak out, that speak out against the Kanye Wests and the Kyrie Irvings. And they just don't. The indifference, the complacency, and by the way, Jews themselves, they simply want to be accepted at the cool kids table.
Right.
And they are prepared. They'll do anything
to be
accepted at the cool kids
and we're saying that we will never be accepted. We tried every form of assimilation on the planet. We failed every time. We tried to be against, it doesn't work. Nature seemingly, I don't know why, for whatever reason, as Peterson says, we won't be left alone. So the question is, what are we going to do with this heightened attention, that fact that we're never going to be left alone? Are we going to embrace it? Jews are the only people who are connected to others by like 3 degrees of separation, not the usual 6. And you know what? You don't need, as Seth said, you don't need the whole world to be around us. Even in your body, most of your body is flesh. It doesn't think and do stuff. So what? It's there for the ride. And then in your brain, there's just tiny point who does all the calculation. You don't need much. It's not quantity, it's quality. What we're saying is, let's rely on that quality that we already have, the connections that we already have, and just use them, not for the usual profit, not to try to be like everyone, but to actually bring this radical idea of unity. Can we do it? Can Jews do it? Screw the world. Can we do it?
I don't know. I'm curious what some of your other guests have said. I just think that what you're describing doesn't have a natural customer base.
We know.
It's not the kind of sellable product that says, I want that. Oh my God. I'm going online right now. Who's got it? Amazon, Apple, I want that. That is very, to me, it's heavy lifting.
It is.
It forces people to be self-reflective in a way that they're not comfortable with. You're asking people to surrender things that they want to do, because in order to achieve certain things, it requires a sense of tension and a sense of competitiveness and
That can stay, by the way.
and rejection. Rejection is a lot easier than acceptance.
Here's how it would work. If the goal is big enough and good enough, then we're willing to all we want is pleasure. We're not taking that away from anybody. We just have to somehow make it that a good life where we feel confident, where we feel loved, where we feel cared for, where we feel healthy, where we feel accepted, that has to be more important than the current life.
And it starts with us. It starts with us. Small group who has a faint memory, how this feels. Around the Shabbat table, when the community gets together and pulls an impossible feat, it's those simple things, almost like the intangible. They're almost fading away, but
most Jews, not in Israel, but most Jews, and I can tell you this because I travel widely and speaking at either synagogues, universities, JCCs, Jewish federations.
Yeah.
I've traveled widely, and I can tell you, most Jews don't know anything about any of this.
I agree.
They don't know. In fact, I would argue they don't know anything about anything except what they do, whatever it is that they do, and renovating kitchens. Jews seem to be phenomenal and how to buy a house in Aspen. There are some things nobody's better. Renovating a kitchen, how to get the right house in Aspen, and whatever it is they do for a living. I am shocked wherever I go, and I say things. If I mention like anti-Semitism in France, people look like I'm out of my mind. If I tell them about the anti-Semitism I received years at NYU, NYJew, that's not possible. They don't know what's going on campuses. They don't know. Most Jews can't tell you the first thing about what is the conflict in Israel. How did it start? They can't tell you the first. Sometimes I literally look at them when they try to do it, and I'm appalled at just the general level of ignorance. So I'm just saying, when you're saying, I look at that and go, God, it's such a heavy lift because it would require so many people to even know there's a problem.
So let's do an exercise.
There is a problem. Most Jews probably don't even know there are protests in Israel.
No. The good thing is, the good news is, since we started, and I've actually made a film about it in 2014, people are waking up to a problem. So thank God things are moving forward. And a little bit of pressure from the outside makes people perk up. Let's do a closing exercise, Thane. If you had the ear of all the Jews, the ear of every Jew on the planet for 1 minute, everybody's listening. What is? And you already said you don't need to apologize, so you don't have to repeat that. I can spare you that. You already said it.
Thank you. That all causes all levels of elevation.
I agree. There's no need to apologize. Looking forward, what would you tell all the Jews? How can we bring ourselves to the next level of our existence?
I just wish, again, it's a little different. The United States is just different than any other country right now. It may change over the next 2 years.
All Jews. You're talking to all Jews. All Jews. Let's say half in Israel, half in the United States. Everybody's listening.
I just think that all efforts at assimilation, all efforts at hiding and blending in, all efforts to secularize, globalize, become cosmopolitans has a limit when it comes to Jews. And so to deny who you are and deny your history and when you care where you come from and what happens to you or to other of your brothers and sisters who you should be thinking of in those terms as your people, that you're making a huge mistake. That you have a moral duty to each other. You have a moral duty to Jewish history, to be aware of the world and aware of the treatment of Jews around the world, and not to delude yourself into thinking that somehow it passes over you as Passover approaches. It doesn't pass over you. You never can fully escape this. It's been determined, you see it, the fact that it's still around in so many forms should be an enormous, shock to the system, which is how we started out. I think one of you started off by introducing that idea. It's everywhere. And I think that given the fact that we're in the 21st century, given the fact that Jews have assimilated so well, the fact that there is such a blowback, such a scapegoating, such a repackaging of old anti-Semitic stereotypes and canards, such a disrespect to the Holocaust, which is only 70 years old, the liberation of the camps. That means there, although very few, still survivors. You would think it would have required hundreds of years, right, for someone to not understand what that meant to be a European Jew between 1933 and 19. You would think it would have to be the 28th century, right? And to actually be 70 some odd years, I just think that this is what I would say to Jews, that it's not a wake-up call. It's if you could stop what you're doing for just a second and to really do some reading and do some critical thinking, you and Jewish history and your fellow brothers and sisters among Jews would be a lot better off. But we're not willing to do that.
Let's stop before the but. We'll be a lot better off. Thane Rosenbaum, thank you so much for coming.
You guys are great.
For waking us up. I'm going to bed in a couple hours, but this was this is a very, very deep, emotional, no holds barred. I thank you.
You guys are lively hosts, and you ask the big questions. And I think of myself as in the ideas business. It's a losing business, guy. By the way. It's not a good business. If you're thinking of getting into the ideas business, I would suggest something else. But I am in the ideas business, and this is clearly a podcast that's in the same business. So I very much appreciate that you're out there.
Thank you so much, Seth.
Thanks, Leo. Have a good sleep. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Thane.
Bye, guys.
We're the Jew Function. Like, follow us, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you with our next guest. Never stop talking about it. Take care.